Good evening, dear professors, our esteemed speaker and members of the IMA community. Welcome to the second session of How to Start a Startup, the flagship lecture series of IIM Ahmedabad, aimed to create a platform for dialogue among the members of the startup community. In the first session, Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani spoke about the life of an entrepreneur, the considerations and the implications that it entails. Today we have amidst us another one of our star alum, Mr. Raghunandan Ji, an entrepreneur at heart and the founder of the hugely successful venture Taxi for Sure. He'll speak on the topic of idea and team, the next logical step in the journey of an entrepreneur. I request Professor Jaju to kindly welcome the speaker on stage. So friends, without much ado, let's just hear it from the man himself.
Hey great guys, just before I start, alright, thanks a lot for having me here and to share whatever little that I know. Before I start on a monologue, I just want to understand how many of you here are entrepreneurs or were entrepreneurs? How many of you here were entrepreneurs or how many people want to start something? So what are the rest guys doing? Forced to sit here. That's okay. Great. So, and what people who didn't raise their hands for questions, no? I was one among them when I was in campus. So it doesn't really matter, right? So getting into IMA was the right thing to do after 2 years of work experience. Then getting out of IMA and earn enough money to pay the hefty education loan was the biggest objective then. And I think which most of you go through that, but you see a lot of your classmates discussing ideas, wanting to start and stuff like that, right? And it's very difficult to keep away from that bunch of people, right? So you also tend to start discussing a lot of ideas, and you hit few, you don't really have enough courage to pursue those, but later you essentially get into the discussion of the flip idea. I had it in 2004. The Ola idea, I had it in 2008, right? And that makes some interesting conversation. Even the people whom you're talking to will not believe you, right? Essentially what, I think I'm supposed to talk about ideas and the team to begin with, right? So let me start with idea. Let me share how did we get the idea, and that may not necessarily be the same approach, but at least there are a few lessons that needs to be learned in that phase. So Apramaya was 1 year junior to me. So Apramaya was 1 year junior to me in campus, but we knew each other for a long time before we got into campus. So currently we knew each other for the last 16 years. That's a lot. So me and Apramaya used to discuss a lot of ideas, and we used to dismiss all the ideas because it was not big enough and it was not great, right? And so during one of those conversations, we were trying to build something similar to Ixigo or Meta Travel search engine. I don't know how many people are aware of Ixigo, right? And once we, so during that conversation also, we essentially discussed that and eliminated that, right? There is no value proposition that we had. So after that, we started doing what we do best after three years of working. That's what most of you guys typically do. Start cribbing about your life, right? Crib about your boss, crib about your corporate, crib about your JetBlue privilege card, Jet Platinum privilege card, right? You crib about everything, right? And during this cribbing time, you essentially start drinking, right? And yeah. So once you start drinking, you essentially get into cribbing mode without any inhibitions, right? So during that crib story is when the idea of Taxi for Sure was stuck. So the only thing that was common between me and Apramaya was I used to be a consultant, Apramaya used to be a business development guy, and the only thing that was common for both of us was we used to travel a lot, right? And whichever city that we used to go to, finding a cab was always difficult. It just so happened that both of us arrived at the same crib at the more or less the same, because of which we realized that there was something in it, right? And thankfully one of us at the present mind put it on a tissue paper, and thankfully we found the tissue paper next day morning, and otherwise I don't think so there would have been a Taxi for Sure story. We knew that there was something interesting that previous night till we found our later the tissue paper, we couldn't really figure out what it was, right? So you guys know the Cafe Coffee Day caption, no? What is that? Cafe Coffee Day. Yeah, a lot more can happen over a mug of beer. So if you really want to discuss and get ideas, right? Ideas would not really typically come when you are sitting alone or trying to ideate, right? Ideas originate typically from discussions. You guys understand what I trying to convey here? You need to discuss. You need to discuss. You just can't get into a meeting with an agenda of getting an idea, right? Ideas happen, right? So you need to essentially continue having the discussion whether the person on the other side is something who is probably of the same caliber as you are, or may not necessarily be, but have those discussions. You need to have those conversations, right? And during those conversations, something or the other is going to tick within you. Whether the person even understands that the other person that you are talking to would understand or not doesn't really matter, right? So you can't sit alone and essentially start looking at ideas, right? You need to have discussions. If you guys are not having those discussions or the conversations, right, you need to start doing that, right? And how do we go about looking at this, right? And what kind of ideas that would typically work, or how do we know it's a great idea or not, right? Those are the questions, right? So there is no hard and fast rule that this is the idea that would really work, or this is the right way to really look at ideas. But given the limited experience that I have investing in some of the startups that I've invested in, or looking at the ecosystem a bit more closer than you guys have, right? The first thing is you are facing a problem, right? And you have a solution to address that particular problem, right? What you need to probably do that is to essentially churn out all the problems that you guys are facing and figure out you have any viable solution to any of those problems, right? That's one. Understood? The second thing is probably look at different sectors, right? There are a lot of new sectors that are really coming up, be it blockchain, be it virtual reality, be it augmented reality, there are drone technology, IoT, right? There is a whole lot of technologies that are really coming up, right? So then you essentially have to figure out whether using these technologies, can you build applications which essentially addresses certain problems. You guys understand? The third one, easier one would be replicating certain ideas that are working in other markets in India. It's not really as straightforward as you, right? You look at something that is working in markets, really figure out what is the problem that it is essentially trying to solve, right? Figure out is that problem is prevalent within Indian markets also, right? And whether the solution is the right solution for the Indian market or something that has to be changed. What you need to understand is what is the problem. You need to go after the problem. And problem is what really matters, right? Those are the three different buckets to really look at ideas and really start having those conversations, right? Have conversations on the problems that you guys are facing. Have conversations on the latest technologies that are really have problems of some of the startups that are really working amazingly well in other markets. Something or the other would essentially really take, right? So having said that, so there are certain horizontals that you need to really look at, where there are problems, right? Which is essentially there are problems, but you essentially have an amazing solution to address the problem, right? Which is I think the Taxi for Sure, Ola, Uber story. People were using taxis. There was already a market for people to use taxis. We didn't really create the market. We essentially came up with a solution that would essentially make it a lot more convenient for people to book taxis, right? So the market existed. We didn't create the market. We didn't